We're going live now, and I'm going to just quickly find that comment. Okay, are we? Yeah, we're going. We're live. We are live for episode 5 of Livin, Vida Lockdown, where today we're going to be talking about getting lean during lockdown. Making the switch from the gym to the home effectively, and mainly I want to talk through many of the sort of myths and misnomers that are floating around with regards to this subject, so that I can potentially stop having to wade in on Facebook debates so regularly with this information. So I know that there's plenty of bro science out there that's steering down the wrong path, and we're hopefully going to clear some of that up. How are you doing today, Gaz? Looking pretty nice where you are.
It is. It's actually deceptively very cold in the shade. I don't have shorts for the right idea. Little man's dressed for the occasion.
So, do you find sometimes with the kid that you're so preoccupied with looking after him, you sort of forget to take care of yourself a little bit?
I definitely find that I rush a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, like I was just wearing shorts in the house, and now I find myself wearing shorts outside.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's interesting.
So there is that factor.
That's interesting. Cool.
So just so you know, we're walking around the local woods. I don't know if you can see what's dead ahead of us.
Yeah.
A nice buck.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Nice buck, growing his antlers, still in velvet.
Nice.
Off he goes.
Yeah, you're sideways to me, so I'm having to do like the dog.
Oh, whoops. How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect for me now.
There you go. Do you see him? Behind that fallen tree?
Yeah, I see. Very nice. There's so many there where you are, huh? Because you're in New Jersey.
Correct. Yeah, these are all suburban deer. It's quite fun. You get to see all their behaviours that you wouldn't in a more pressured area, where you're a bit more in the sticks and all the hunters and stuff go. You don't really, you know, they just bugger off as soon as they see you. But here you get to see how they really behave as if you weren't there. You kind of stay in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
They act as if you weren't around. That's pretty fun. I saw some good things here yesterday. Yesterday I came out without the phone. I normally record all the fun wildlife things. And I saw a hawk, a little red-tailed hawk. And it was swooping down on these squirrels. And these squirrels were in a hollow tree. And as the hawk swept down, the squirrels would scurry into the hole in the hollow tree. And then the hawk would, you know, find a place, perch on it, keep a hawk eye on this spot, and the squirrels would poke their heads out. He'd swoop in again, and they'd go back in, and this whole sort of game of cat and mouse or hawk and squirrel went on for a good 10, 15 minutes. It was brilliant.
Like Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Well, it was getting funnier because the squirrels would come out the tree, run to the next tree, the hawk would swoop in, they'd jump onto the trunk of a tree and then like skip around the back. You know? So, you know, they were hiding from it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm really amazed how much good nature you've got there. It's really awesome. That's definitely something that I hope people are taking advantage of as much as possible during this time, you know, getting outside and getting themselves wherever they can. But I feel like you're really lucky to be so close to a very densely populated area, but to have all that wildlife there, it's quite unusual.
It is true, yeah. It's surprising what wildlife is here. I mean, for example, I'm going past this little... I mean, I won't bore you by showing too much, but over there is a fox's earth, and there's a den. I've seen cubs come out of there. The other day I was walking down the street and I heard this skit, and I saw what I thought was a dog without an owner, and then on second look I was like, holy crap, that's a coyote.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, probably a coy dog. If it's this far northeast, they're all mixed up. You know, they're coy wolf / coy dog. But yeah, it was definitely like it was still a wild canine, and a big one too, big fluffy.
That's pretty cool.
little bit, not mangy, but, you know, molting its coat. So it had that little sort of wily coaty look to it, a little bit scraggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was funny. I kind of looked at it, took it for a dog, then looked at it and goes, hang on, that's no dog. That's a coyote.
Yeah, that's awesome when you're really not expecting to see something like that as well.
Brilliant.
It just pops up. That's
that's
really cool.
Yeah, and the little guy loves it when he's awake.
When he's looking. Emrys, the star of the show. Hopefully he'll be able to give us some insight into baby training.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, his goals are completely the opposite of the topic of conversation. He's trying to layer on as much lard as possible at the moment.
He's on that full bulk.
Yeah,
he doesn't care where the calories are coming from.
Exactly, yeah. His isn't a clean bulk. He's on the dirty bulk.
He's on like the scaled down equivalent of Eddie the Beast's diet.
Yeah, 100%.
Pure one-way ticket to Massville.
Oh, yeah. Scrambled egg, toast, yogurt.
It's amazing how much they can eat, when you look at the size of them and how much they can polish off. It's like, how does that work? Can't even do the maths on that.
This guy puts down mashed potatoes like he's got hollow legs. I don't know where it all goes. I don't know where it goes.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Yeah. Cool, man. Right, well, I'm actually going to start this probably in slightly backwards order. I'm going to start with a bit of myth busting based on a conversation I've actually had today online. And just to kind of fill in a bit of the backstory. So, you know, I quite often, I'm in a lot of these sort of groups online and stuff, and I really love to sort of share motivation, see what other, things people are sharing in these groups and stuff. But yeah, it's always a bit painful sometimes to watch some of the kind of bro science that gets shared in there. And today was a classic example. Sort of ended up wading in on a topic where somebody was they're in essence, they're kind of shifting their training from the gym environment into the home. They're looking to drop a bit of weight. They've already got a decent amount of muscle mass, and they're looking to drop some body fat and kind of make the shift from gym-based exercise to home training. So more body weight type stuff. There was so much not so much, but there was a few bro science comments and things that were coming in as kind of help for this guy, and I ended up just sort of wading in to kind of set a few things straight. And I'm going to sort of go through a couple of the comments that I saw on there, which drove me to get involved. Okay, so we were talking about somebody who's already got a decent amount of muscle mass, and they're just looking to drop some body fat. This is not really a complicated subject as far as I'm concerned. And if you disagree with anything I say, Gaz, at any point, please, raise your concerns, and we can give a very kind of like two-sided perspective of, what we both think is right and wrong. But one of the things that got me going straight off the bat was a comment from someone who said, you need to be doing tons of cardio. Now, I don't know what you're going to add to this, okay? But for me, this is the exact sort of comment that starts to sort of get my head in my hand straight away. Because when we're talking about shedding body fat, okay, and the relevance of training and exercise to that goal, okay, what we're talking about is essentially just creating a calorie deficit. All right, now there are more factors to consider than just this. Okay, but essentially that's the only fundamental principle that has to occur in order to start dropping weight. Now, when we're talking about adding exercise into the picture and what exercise specifically is good for fat loss, there are intricacies, but to the largest extent, it doesn't really matter. If you can create that calorie deficit that you need in order to lose weight off the back of just changing your diet. Your exercise can stay exactly the same. All you're doing, if you increase the amount of exercise, you start doing hours and hours of cardio, is that you're basically extending your calorie expenditure. But there's still only an optimum calorie deficit that you need to be able to achieve in order to drop that weight. So it really makes no sense to say things like, start doing tons and tons of cardio, because all you're doing is accentuating your calorie expenditure, and you're going to have to either eat more to keep the calorie deficit the same as you would want anyway, or you're going to end up with a massive calorie deficit, which is going to make you really hungry, really tired, and eventually result in a lot of fatigue. Okay. What also happens there, if you're not really interested in doing hours and hours of cardio, and you're forcing yourself to do it anyway, is that in itself is also going to make you miserable. Right? Now, this journey doesn't have to be miserable. You know, there's only a few factors that really need to change, and depending on how much of a rush you're in, and I would argue that being in a rush is self-defeating, you know, in itself. You know, there's really no need to start banging on kind of hours and hours of cardio. So what would be your take on that, Gaz? Is there anything there that you kind of disagree with, or?
Ultimately, when you're looking to drop fat mass, not just mass overall, it's like every function in the human body, it's about managing hormones. So you're looking at your hormonal profile. What stimulates you to burn fat and retain lean mass is, again, your hormonal profile. Now, there are a lot of anomalies in this. So you can take a lot of bodybuilders. Bodybuilding isn't necessarily, in my opinion, the key to optimal health. But it's a good example in this case, is that there are plenty of bodybuilders who are very, very lean. And yet they basically do no cardio whatsoever. And they eat way in energy expenditure, you know, of their output, and yet they're still lean people. And I'm talking bodybuilders without the use of, you know, performance enhancing drugs as well.
Copious amounts.
Because obviously it's a sport that's very much associated with that. Now, how does that happen? What it is, it's to do with the type of movement, the form in which the energy they consume comes in, and fundamentally how their body is reacting to the hormonal profile that they're building. So what does that mean in reality? So in reality, your blood sugar spikes will dictate how much fat you put on. And this can be done by means of stress. And remember, stress isn't always mental stress. It can be physiological. And so the key stress hormone to think about there is cortisol. So what does cortisol do? Cortisol, it's a survival hormone that says, I'm in trouble. I need to release cortisol to get out of trouble. When you do long distance cardio, you actually produce a lot of cortisol, and it will initially break down lean mass before it breaks down fat mass. Fat is actually quite a complicated molecule. So you'll break down a little bit of muscle, a little bit of bone, whatever it is, and convert it into blood sugar. When you are predominantly operating on a particular fuel source, let's call it fat, because that's what you want to burn, when you're doing long distance running, your body, through that continued stress of long distance running, is producing lots and lots of cortisol and pumping blood sugar into your system. But also it's buffering the waste products, which I want you to think about. Just hold that as a place marker, buffering the waste products with long distance cardio. And it is predominantly burning fat. Now, your body, being a survival machine that is built, you know, you're in your hunter-gatherer form as we speak. If you deplete a resource in your body, what do you think your body wants to do with that resource? Question. If you deplete a resource in your body, you're a survival machine. Your body
of course, you need to replenish it.
Exactly.
It needs to replace it.
It wants to replace it, and it wants to pool it. So you will find that long distance runners, competitive long distance runners versus sprinters, actually have a higher body fat percentage. And the reason is that their body wants to store their primary fuel source. That's what they use in their event. So long distance cardio will actually generally cause you to store more fat and drop lean mass that's excessive to what it is you need to do for your event.
Yeah,
so
and we see that all the time with ultra runners, don't we? You know, they're not typically very, very lean guys. They're very light, and they generally tend to have that kind of dad bod frame, for lack of a better kind of description.
Yeah, 100%.
Very, almost very skinny fat.
Very exactly. The skinny fat guys, very, very efficient at what they do. Brilliant. If you don't have an ego about that, and that's exactly what your event that you want to do, then you know, who cares? I'm not knocking it. I'm sort of answering the question of, do you want to drop your body fat percentage? Now, what does increase your lean mass to body fat percentage is growth hormone, testosterone, or the anabolic hormones. So that cortisol is catabolic. It breaks you down. Anabolic hormones are your very simple terms: growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor. Sorry, I'm shaking the phone around as I'm talking. Testosterone. So, you know what these do? They basically cause you to build lean tissue, build bone density, and drop fat mass. When you're actually building muscle, growth needs to be powered. It's an energy requirement. Growth is an energy requirement. And it's a pretty slow process compared to sprinting or lifting a heavy weight. So guess what it uses? It uses fat, uses that complex molecule that it doesn't need to use blood sugar to power growth. So it breaks down fat, and everything ultimately does become blood sugar, but it doesn't use it from what's pooled in your muscles and your liver. Yes, So you break down fat, and you use it to power growth. So though energy expenditure will, compared to your energy yield of your food, I'm trying to avoid using the word calories, because not all calories are equal. But I think you get the point. The amount of energy you're consuming via your food, and if you have a higher energy output, yes, you are going to store less as fat, but it is not the predominant factor. I'd like to underline that. It is not the predominant factor. The predominant factor is how anabolic are you? And how anabolic you are is dictated by training your fast twitch fibers. And there are basically three ways, to quote Pavel Tsatsouline, there are three ways that you can train those fibers. You move fast, you move heavy, or you do a protocol that's a combination of both, like Olympic lifting or something like that.
Or Metcon type stuff.
Exactly. So basically, long story short, intense training is optimal for fat loss over long duration, what you would consider long duration cardio. Long duration cardio absolutely has its place in your training, because the truth is, if you have a history of some degree of long duration cardio, and I'm talking the kind of cardio where you get your heart rate up and keep it up for 20 minutes fairly regularly, so 30, 40-minute run, twice a week or whatever.
Beyond anaerobic,
beyond anaerobic. What you'll do is you'll actually prime yourself for when you do your anaerobic training a little bit better. And this comes from sort of personal experience as well. So even if I want to get stronger and put on mass, in the past, what I've done is almost the opposite of what people think. Running stuff is catabolic. You don't want to do that. But what it does is it allows me to raise my intensity of my hypertrophy training, because the development of, it's not just the efficiency of your lungs and your heart, it's actually your capillarization and things like that. So what capillarization is, capillaries are those tiny, tiny, tiny little blood vessels. Most people know what capillaries are. They're kind of offshoot from the major ones, and get into your muscles, get into your tissues and things like that. So the more of those you have, basically the more energy, whether it's aerobic, anaerobic, you can get to muscle cells. And if you have like a good cardio base and then start a strength or hypertrophy training protocol, you will basically fatigue less, and you will have the capacity for more high intensity training. And the more volume of high intensity training you can do that's optimal to you, the better your growth rate will be. So
absolutely. And I think it's worth.
Yeah, sorry. So what I'd just like to confirm is you want to keep that volume of intensity training as high as possible, but below the threshold where you're breaking into, endurance. You want to keep it lactic or in the absence of oxygen. So you want to be moving so fast, so heavy that your muscles don't require oxygen to move. It's too fast for them. When you slow down to the point that you're no longer doing that, you're no longer doing sort of anabolic type training. You're now doing that catabolic endurance type training. But your capacity for anabolic training will be much higher if you start off with a very, very good cardiovascular base.
Yeah, I've seen some research as well that suggests that the most positive sort of hormone response you get from cardiovascular training in favor of anabolic hormone production is actually just limiting yourself to the phosphate system, which is quite interesting. So we're talking about sprints that would last less than 8 seconds even, with enough rest time in between that you can recover substantially enough from that to replenish the ATP, which is the most instantly used energy source that we have, the most readily available energy source that we have, the thing that gets turned into energy, at the very kind of last hurdle between, the energy being used. And then that, even staying within that and not even venturing as far into anaerobic is potentially even better for having that anabolic hormone response. So I absolutely agree with what you say there. Definitely staying within the aerobic, not the aerobic threshold, but before the threshold of going into aerobic.
Yes, your anaerobic threshold. So one of the reasons I said to sort of remember, just sort of underline and put that little point in the bank about being able to buffer waste products when you are doing long-term cardio is part of your hormonal response to being anaerobic, to the proportion of, let's just say, in very simple terms, growth hormone and testosterone, etc., that you produce is actually proportionate to the spike in waste products from that kind of anaerobic type training. So if you do a sort of hardcore burning type exercise that basically doesn't get you puffed out, that just makes your muscles fatigue, what you will have is a large spike in waste products in the body. If you were to slow it down and do it so that you get the same volume of waste products but over an hour, your body has the ability to buffer them. And the chemoreceptors in your brain doesn't tell your hypothalamus to produce as much of that growth hormone. So your pituitary isn't going to produce as much growth hormone, your balls aren't going to release as much testosterone. You're just, you're not going to do it. You're not going to get that hit, that spike. That's very much geared towards hypertrophy. Now, hypertrophy is good for getting lean. You do need to feed it, so your appetite will go up, and you've got to be careful of what you eat. When you just perform pure, what I think of strength and power-based exercises, where you go very heavy or very fast, or very heavy and very fast, and to be contracting fast doesn't necessarily mean that you're always moving fast. If you imagine, if I was to do a really, really, really super heavy deadlift, even though that weight isn't going up that fast, my type 2 muscle fibers are firing at a rate of knots. Like if I was to, if that barbell was to disappear at the click of a fingers, I would jump through the ceiling, because I'm firing my muscle fibers extremely quickly. I'm recruiting them. I hope that makes sense to people. So that's an example of where heavy training trains both speed and fast twitch fibers. And it's that training that will basically result in that there's anabolic hormones and results in greater lean to fat mass. And then the icing on the cake from there, it's probably a bad analogy, but the added extra, the bonuses from that would be to now start thinking about your diet. And that would essentially be restricting refined sugar. And once you restrict refined sugar, do hard speed and anabolic type training, you will definitely be, you're basically an alien from Mars if you weren't losing weight. Your physiology would work differently. That is how human physiology works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. I was also talking about the anaerobic response and the production of lactic, which then results in in a more anabolic response off the back of that during the recovery phase. I've been listening to a guy that's come on my radar quite a few times. He's doing some really interesting stuff. John McKeown, he's the author of The Oxygen Advantage. And in any case, he's talking about some really interesting studies that they've done on breath holding, and that essentially having those same anaerobic results that you would get from actual anaerobic training, but breathing normally. He's basically saying that you can get a lot of the same results from using sort of simple breath holding techniques. Which is quite interesting. It's something for people to sort of look a bit more into if they're interested in that. I agree with you. We can get into the nitty-gritty of specifically which types of exercise are more conducive to fat loss. And I think it's fair to say that without even going into too much detail, we can both agree that longer state, steady state, long duration cardiovascular exercise is certainly not the optimal approach to that.
What it is telling your body to store fat. In essence, it is telling your body to store fat. Now, here's the other flip side of it. Personally, I would not rule it out entirely. Even if you're going in some sort of fat loss stage, like, oh, that's it, I'm going to go heavy fast and everything all the time. If you're going to train like that, it might be an idea to do a sort of 30, 40-minute run, even an hour, once a week. And the reason I say that is it just resets the system. It flushes everything out. And I'm talking nice and slow, something that's just going to basically get you moving, oil your joints, as it were, and keep you going. It's not a bad idea. At the end of the day, human beings are evolved to run. I'm using running very specifically here over other forms of cardio. And it will, for lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reasons that can get very complicated, basically help you optimize your system.
Exactly, yeah. There's so many other benefits that translate into improved performance, improved health, improved mood, all sorts of stuff that it's just worth doing of it anyway. And that is 100%. That's always the advice that I give to clients as well. I don't think there's a single program that, unless there's a specific reason why not, where I would completely omit some kind of aerobic cardiovascular movement each week. Because it's just too beneficial. But I think what we can both agree on there is that there's obviously an optimal way to train, and there's even an optimal way that you can include cardio if you want to. That could be conducive to additional 100%. Fat loss that would help you getting lean. But that all in all, would you agree that in essence there's no real requirement to change anything about the program that you're already doing that would mean that you wouldn't elicit fat loss in the light of changes to your dietary intake?
Sorry, rephrase that. Say that again.
I made it a bit waffly at the end and I sort of lost it. So what I'm saying is, even though there's ways to optimize your fitness training, there's no requirement, in my view, to make any adjustment to your training as long as you've got the dietary changes necessary to elicit fat loss.
Yes, I would, unless your training is specifically based around long distance cardiovascular training, then you are going to find it difficult. But if for this guy, for example, he's into strength training, then you're essentially cut out the sugar, and basically make bigger rests, believe it or not, and more explosive movements.
Yeah,
we're at home.
And I would still, even then, I would still make the point that anyone who's serious about long distance running would still be doing some kind of strength conditioning, and even a high level long distance runner can achieve fat loss through dietary manipulation alone, without changing anything about their training schedule. So
definitely,
what I'm getting at is that I believe that the idea of adding tons and tons of cardio is not conducive to optimal fat loss, and I'm getting the impression from what you've said that you would agree with that.
I would say it's just doing tons and tons of cardio without any other input is more conducive to losing lean mass, i.e. muscle, and increasing fat mass. So your ratio will change. So you may technically weigh less, but you certainly your body fat percentage definitely won't go down. In fact, it will probably go in the opposite direction.
Cool. So I think we've kind of dispelled the myth then that tons and tons of cardio is the better option to go for if you're looking to lean up using resistance based training program. Okay. One of the other comments that kind of really got me a little bit triggered, should we say, was and there was more than one person, if I recall correctly, that jumped in with something similar to this, is the requirement for multiple supplements. I saw one post on there, guys listed at least 5 different types of supplement, including pre-workout, amino acids, and all this kind of thing. And the cumulative cost of that is no small fortune for even those with a decent pay packet coming in every month. And again, there are ways that we can optimize dietary practices with various supplements, although I would argue that probably 90% of what's available out there is not worth spending any money on. But again, this I feel like this is an area where people are very quick to jump on sort of crutches like supplements without fully understanding the simplicity of the situation, which is you just need to be doing regular exercise and maintaining a caloric deficit. Essentially, that is all that is required in order to start whittling away at that body fat. So supplementation, what in my opinion would be for the everyday person, we're not talking about athletes here, but for the everyday person, in my view, the only supplements I'll generally recommend to people would be some sort of protein powder. And in terms of the research that I've done on the differences between the main types, it's negligible enough that you don't need to really worry about it. Just pick the one that you like the taste of that fits in with your tolerances or whatever. Creatine, going again, that goes back into what we were talking about earlier with regards to anabolic response, okay, having more phosphate available in order to tax the phosphate system. And multivitamins, vitamin and mineral supplements that you have a reason to believe you may need, may be deficient in already, would be my sort of caveat for those. So anything there that you disagree with? Anything that what would be your...
No, I think it's all a matter of convenience. Those are the supplements that normally in modern life that that one might need to supplement with just for the sake of convenience. If you're not getting out your food, all vitamins and supplements are basically, in my mind, are unnecessary if you've got a true proper balanced diet.
Yeah.
Where they come in handy is essentially if you don't.
Can I add a caveat to what I said, because it's a really good point what you're saying, and I'm basically working off the basis that most people will find it quite practically difficult to obtain the optimum amount of protein required for a weight loss diet through real food alone. But in the case that someone was able to obtain it through real food, I would recommend that. So that's the reason why I've thrown protein powders in there. Just for most people, it's inconvenient to get that much.
It's true, and high quality protein in whole food form is actually becoming expensive these days. It's becoming much more pricey. So there is a point where, both regards to convenience and price, where some protein powder can actually benefit you. And it's all food, and I wouldn't want to base my entire diet on highly refined foods, but a little bit is not going to harm you. And if you feel you need that extra fuel and it's working for you, then great. Again, I wouldn't base a whole diet on it. For me, in modern living, depending on the part of the world you live in, especially in sort of the more northern climes, if there was one vitamin I would recommend, it would probably be vitamin C. Human beings actually need quite a decent amount of vitamin C. We are one of the few animals on the planet that don't synthesize our own. Probably hints back to something of a fruitarian past. I think something like fruit bats and hedgehogs don't as well. And the reason for that is you can't always be sure how much vitamin C is actually in your fruit and veg. If your orange is like an inorganic orange, I always use orange because it's the classic example of the fruit everyone thinks is contained with vitamin C. Vitamin C is a very, very, very perishable mineral. So the second that orange comes off the tree, it's basically on a ticking clock as the quality of that vitamin C essentially just disappears. When you have like an inorganic orange, you don't know how old it is because it still looks fresh and it's maybe even tastes a bit fresh, but its vitamin C quantity, even though it was the same as from the inorganic orange and the organic orange, might be the same at the point at which it's picked from the tree. By the time you get round to eating that inorganic orange, its vitamin C complement might be the same as cardboard. The organic orange, this is my only sort of example where eating organic can be beneficial to you in terms of micronutrient content, other than eco-friendly stuff. Is you have a very good indicator to the nutritional value of that organic orange simply by looking at it, because how it looks on the outside is what its nutritional value is going to be on the inside. Whereas these inorganic ones, all the pesticides and everything, the way they're bred and genetically engineered, they look fresher and micronutrients have perished. So vitamin C is a nutrient we need, very much so. We cannot synthesize, and it is something that I would, if you're in a position where you don't have massive access to fresh fruit and vegetables, consider supplementing with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely don't want to give out too much anything that would be taken as sort of direct recommendation or advice, because it's not my specialist area by any stretch. But I think I'm right in saying from the sort of research that I have done that it's pretty difficult. I think it's practically almost impossible to overdose on vitamin C as a human as well.
Totally. And then with your supplements that you are going to take, make sure that they basically, when you read it, they come with bioflavonoids, because you need those for them to be absorbable. A lot of vitamin C, the cheap stuff, unfortunately, like most things, you get what you pay for. The cheap stuff tends to be not very bioavailable. two human beings.
Yes.
On another note, are you seeing this nice bun?
Yeah, it's looking good. Looks delicious, to be honest. Where's your bow when you need it?
Yeah, waiting for the season.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. We could sort of go a little bit further into the sort of world of vitamins and minerals. I'm always a bit torn about it. You know, some people say, "Oh, for the cost of it, it's worth taking just to kind of have all your bases covered." But then again, I'm always kind of really reluctant to just kind of throw things into the mix that you don't even know if you need or not. You know, and yeah, it does require a bit of expense to go and get tested and, you know, get your bloods done and get your urine tested to see what it is you're deficient of. But, you know, what are you supplementing something for if you don't really know if you need it? So especially if you don't even have any kind of like symptoms of anything as well. But the vitamin C, I would say you're pretty bang on there. That's probably the one that you could say, I'm pretty sure I probably need more of it than I'm getting. But in any case, is vitamin C required to get lean during this example that we're talking about?
I mean, it's massively important for metabolic health, and metabolism is a massive part of getting lean. So yeah, I would say ultimately yes.
All right, fair enough. Would you advise somebody to go and spend hundreds of bucks on essential amino acids, branched chain amino acids, pre-workout supplements, and whatever else they might be able to find in the local supplement store in order to achieve their fat loss goals?
No, eat eggs. If you want a full complement of amino acids, eat eggs.
There we go.
Sorry,
a complete amino acid profile in one egg. Exactly. Right. So that's another one that kind of I feel is quite a big misnomer, is this requirement to suddenly spend loads of money on supplements, and that supplements are going to be the game changer between, you know, being able to achieve your goals and not. And I think this is where it's at for me, is that, you know, all of these things, if you do your homework, if you know what works for you, you know, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, can potentially optimize what you're doing. But, you know, I really like to go off the sort of Pareto principle with this stuff, in that, you know, 80% of the effects, 80% of the positive benefits are going to come from about 20% of the actual causes. You know, and there's really only a couple of things that people really need to focus on to achieve their goals, and you can kind of turn a blind eye to the other stuff until you've got those nailed. You know, a lot of the stuff that I see people talk about is very much, in my opinion, sort of need only be reserved for athletes, people that have got absolutely everything, that have got the absolute fundamentals nailed, and are looking to get those 1%. The 1% that are going to put them ahead of the competition are the things like the sports supplements, the very finer specifics of what kind of training stimulus you're providing, you know, which specific exercises you're doing in your strength sessions, which specific order of things you're putting into your HIIT workouts, you know, how many rest periods you're putting in between Metcon workouts. I mean, this sort of stuff can have attention put on it and can yield a positive benefit, but not until you've got the fundamental principles covered. All right. And in the case of this, in my opinion, it's somebody who's already got some decent muscle mass, looking to retain it, switching from gym-based exercise to more home-based exercise, body weight training, and wants to lose some weight. You know, the things that we're talking about here are adopting a good body weight training program, supplemented with an appropriate diet, and everything else needs to come after that, in my opinion.
100%. I mean, your biggest supplement is consistency. You know, your most effective thing is consistency. And the truth is, you know, we've talked so much in terms of specific protocols and this and that, but your training can even be fairly chaotic. Say you're not the most organized person but perhaps you've got a bit of an organized mind or a disciplined mind that you get out and do things. If you're doing strength training regularly and consistently, and you're fundamentally doing the same exercises and aiming to improve on a few core exercises and then throwing some other things because you're ADDing out and you're just doing whatever you feel like looks fun at the time. Yeah. And it's fairly ad hoc. If you're doing strength training all the time, you're going to get big and you're going to get lean. It's just going to happen. It's biology. Consistency trumps everything. Consistency is where it's at. If you're inconsistent and you can hit the, leading world protocols, you can hit, things that have been absolutely proven, Tabatas and, programs written by, 𝐀𝐜𝐜𝐸𝐸 himself, you're not gonna get anywhere because it's layering the effects one on top of the other, and we lead a little bit into periodization theory there, but which is essentially, in a nutshell, you train, in many ways your fitness comes down in the moment that you start training because you fatigue, and so your body has done a sort of micro amount of damage to it. And then there's a period of recovery and what's known as supercompensation. And it helps to think of this in evolutionary terms. Your body's saying, oh, crap, oh, that was pretty intense. The demands of my body, I don't realize I'm not, some hunter-gatherer caveman type. I've just been through a situation that could have potentially killed me. If I am going to survive, as is written into my DNA, survival and adaptation, then I better get, stronger, faster, more enduring, whatever I was pressured to do, I better do that. And so you come back a bit from that damage, and you don't just compensate, you super compensate. You come back a tiny bit faster and a tiny bit stronger after that session. And then you go do another session once you've recovered from that, and the body says, oh God, it happened again. I need to improve again. Because this time maybe it was a little bit harder as well, because the intensity went up just a little bit. Because I could handle more, and so on and so forth. And if we take that into getting lean, if you're going to do that with your anaerobic, explosive, type 2, fast switch muscle fiber type training, you are going to get lean. Plain and simple. It's simple biology, but you must do it consistently. So I would say most people will start to notice gains in performance within about 3 weeks. And the biggest enemy you probably have is the weighing scale and the mirror. If I were, one of your clients looking to get lean, forget the mirror, forget the weighing scale, do a high intensity protocol that you get into just for the sake of just enjoying it. And do you know what? Even at first, if you don't enjoy it that much, just aim to progress into it. Just get into it for what it is. Just get into it. About 3 weeks into it, you will feel different. You will notice a performance improvement. If you notice an performance improvement, physiologically, you are changing. No matter what your, body dysmorphia tells you, you are changing. The scales may lie to you. You may have become more muscular so that your weight will not reflect these changes in your body. Performing a particularly accurate body fat percentage calculation requires calipers, etc. So even those scales that do it all for you don't work necessarily that well. They can lie to you as well. But if you have a change in performance, you are changing. About 3 months in, then start looking at the scales and the mirror, and you will notice a big difference. Now, who's going to have the discipline to stay away from the scales and the mirror for 3 months? Realistically, probably not that many people. But delay it as long as you possibly can. And if you're to answer the original question, so what that generally means is for the average person, they're not going to be able to do raise their intensity much necessarily with increased resistance from an external object, i.e. a heavier weight. You're not going to have access to it. So you're going to be at home. So now you've got to start thinking of basically how to make your calisthenics harder and how to make you're either going to increase from press-ups to clapping press-ups. Even if you're not doing clapping press-ups, if you're just launching yourself up as fast as you can between each rep, controlling it on the way down, bang, bang, putting it out hard and fast on each rep, you've increased the intensity. That's one way. The next way would be any kind of running training. Start increasing, like your sprints, and this is going more into that anaerobic type stuff. So you're going to train pure speed and pure power with massive rests in between. And you're going to then train anaerobic type things like your Tabata type protocols that are going to make you burn and feel like you're going to vomit. Feeling like you're going to vomit is actually a sign of, massive lactate buildup, and you hopefully will have a direct and proportional growth hormone response to that. So you're definitely going to get lean when you hit those hard gut-busting, grueling type sessions. They don't have to be 100% feeling like you're going to collapse every single time. If you're consistent, you can be doing this at 70, 80% of your maximum. And the good thing about doing that means you will come back. It's very, very, very hard, especially if you're on your own, you're in lockdown, you don't have a coach to consistently, go balls to the wall like you're going to faint every single time. Not everybody is Dave Goggins. And to be honest with you, I don't even think Goggins is doing that. I think he does that every now and again to see where he's at, but he's not doing that each and every time.
It's not optimal to do it all the time.
Exactly.
I think the level that he's at, the level that he's at, says to me that he's not doing that because otherwise his performance wouldn't be at that level.
100%. Yeah, he's a beast and a savage, and he stays hard in his own words through consistency. Yeah. Consistency is what it is. It's rain, wind, or shine. That's what we're talking about. Pushing yourself. Like pushing yourself, still needs to be intelligently done. Pushing yourself is about into total exhaustion every single set that you do, every single session that you do. It's about pushing yourself to stay on track with your goals. When most people go wrong, it's not the intensity of effort, it's the amount of times that you show up to get your workout done. And as long as that's in place, then intensity of effort, challenging enough of the time will suffice. The consistency will carry the rest of the way. Totally. And honestly, for the goals that we're talking about, getting lean and putting on muscle mass, in my personal opinion, are some of the easiest forms of exercise anyway. I mean, what do? You do some hard reps and then you have a massive rest in between, and then you do some more hard reps, then you have a massive rest in between. Like you hit a bunch of clapping press ups or whatever, move on to some jump squats and then sit down.
Absolutely.
It couldn't be more easy. I know that sounds a bit, I don't know, whatever for people out there who are struggling, but it truly is. I mean, honestly, it's to do this kind of strength and lean mass gaining and fat stripping type exercise. It's not like being a real athlete. It's not like having to run till your butt falls off or whatever. It's like it's actually some of the easier things, so people can only make it hard.
You're only having to dip into the discomfort zone. In all honesty, but you just have to be dipping into it regularly enough to initiate that adaptation. It's not like you say, it's not like being a proper it's not like being an elite level athlete where you have to go to that horrible place, regularly a few times a week. Or,
it's not like being a 400-meter track runner or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where you just have to do those distance repeats, or bury yourself in a 400-meter distance repeat for 30 minutes or whatever. So that's awesome, man. I mean, we've covered pretty much everything that to talk about. There's other stuff I would like to mention, but I think I'm going to start wrapping it up. There's just one thing that I would like to touch on before we come to a close, which is another thing that tends to come up. You know, I see a lot of these people when they're giving out advice to others about their journeys is coaxing people into extreme measures. For example, a comment that I saw on the same thread I was talking about earlier was, you know, cut out all of your bad habits, no drink, no sugar, you know, no alcohol. That's drink. But you know, I feel like for some reason people are really drawn to extremes. I think the attraction is that you feel as long as you're doing something extreme, that extreme results will follow. But in my experience as a coach, the least likely method that's going to work for you is the one that makes you most uncomfortable most of the time. Yeah, and the one that's most likely to work for you is the one that just does enough, but that you can still enjoy. Yeah, and it's quite easy to manage, you know, training in a way that it's challenging but enjoyable. Yeah, and it's quite easy to manage a diet in a way that is restrictive but still includes the things that you enjoy regularly. And if you combine those two things, like you're gonna get to your goals. So there's really no reason to take everything to these extreme measures of cut out all the alcohol, cut out all the junk food, don't eat anything bad, train every single day, train to 100% every single time. This is a recipe, for me, this is as much of a recipe for disaster as not doing anything, because they're just as likely to achieve the same result.
What it will do is you'll get somebody that's hardcore for a few months. Whether they'll be there next year, I don't know. But when there is that inevitable sort of, let's call it relapse, because of the massively unpleasant memories that they will carve in association with their fitness training, the point with which they take action again and start training again will probably be a longer gap than if it was somebody that just kind of like, you know, got into a few bad habits and lost their discipline and you know, took a week off, a couple of weeks off, and all right, okay, get back on it, and kept up with their consistency again. I agree. I think it's.
I would even say that the time frames you just mentioned as examples are, in my experience, are even quite optimistic. You know, I see people not really with extreme measures like that for longer than a couple of weeks, and that's, you know, that's real.
Well, sorry, I don't think I was clear. I meant like somebody that's on like a sensible program, not as enthusiastic and jingoistic, might take a week or two off here where they slack, whereas the person's had such these, you know, the extremist is the guy that's going to have so many unpleasant memories. Like, God knows how long he's going to relapse for. You know, who knows? It's going to be years. Because they're not going to want to come back because it's going to come back to all that nonsense.
I mean, this is my massive bugbear with the quick, what I call the quick fix bullshit hype, you know, industry. Gearing these people up for a 30-day transformation, even if you can stick with something quite extreme for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days even, and achieve some initial success, you know, these people are looking they're looking forward to the end of it. And when that end comes, you're not going to sustain the results that you've got because the method that you had is not sustainable. And then once you've taken a break, you're not going to want to come back to it because it was fucking hard work and it was miserable anyway. So I really think it's just
100%. I mean, it's got to be enjoyable.
Yeah,
it's got to be enjoyable. And do you know what? If you're one of those people that's decided it's not enjoyable at all, there's at least got to be tolerable.
Yes. So, even if you're sadistic and you enjoy the punishment, you know, it's got to be sustainable. I think is like tolerable.
100%. 100%. And then, you know, obviously injury and stuff like that comes in. And, it's a balance. It depends on the individual and what their capacity is. One person's capacity for training is going to be completely different to another's. So
if you're conditioned to hard work, then hard work is not so uncomfortable. It doesn't leave you so battered afterwards. You can recover from
exactly.
If you're conditioned to it, it's going to put you out for
exactly. And you know what? If you start slowly with one thing, there tends to be a snowball effect. One good habit leads into another, leads into another, leads into another.
Absolutely.
One thing I used to do for recovery when I was living at London Shoot, I used to take a lot of cold showers. Mm-hmm. And one of the sort of unexpected benefits of cold showers is you get in, you get out, you soap yourself up, and then you get clean, you put your clothes on, and it actually made my showers, not simply because it was unpleasant, because they spend a lot of time in the cold shower, it becomes, actually, pleasurable on some level.
Yeah.
It was a great habit to be in, and it started making me more efficient. And I've got back into that habit for like the last 3 weeks. Every morning I cold shower. Sometimes it still gets pretty chilly here, and there can be frost and stuff. And those are the days I look forward to my cold shower the most. It's freezing, absolutely freezing. But there's something about, I've done one good habit. Another good habit. I'm going to make sure I do my dips today. I'm going to make sure I do them, because otherwise, I'm not really on the program. And each thing just leads into a next, leads into a next, leads into a next. And how does that affect your training consistency and just sheer volume of training? Is one thing that's in keeping with your goals leads to the next, and you start to enjoy them and look forward to them. And physiologically, you're actually just building your capacity for training as well. You're physiologically adapting to that. Your physiological adaptation to volume of training will go up, whether it's volume of intense training, volume of whatever. All these things are great. We've kind of gone on to motivation again from getting lean. But, if your overall goal is to get lean and you're constantly thinking about it, and if you're in one good habit, then one good habit leads to the next. Yeah. There is some research on cold showers and, and getting lean.
Yeah, there absolutely is.
Mobilizing brown fat.
That's really funny you mentioned that, actually, because literally the past 2 days, I've just started having cold showers again. There was a habit that I used to live by, and I haven't done it for a little while. Well, actually, I haven't had a shower for ages. That's been one of the reasons. I don't even know if I told you this, but I moved into this apartment recently, and we didn't have a shower for like 2 months. So I was having to use like the neighbour's shower. But anyway, I can't tell if you're still there. But yeah, the last 2 days was like...
No, I'm here.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I need to get back into that. I was doing that. And when I was really at my peak of it as well, was when I was living in the Swiss mountains in winter. And nothing was colder than that cold shower. And I would turn it all the way down, and it would be absolutely Baltic cold. And so now I just kind of like, and this is what I'm always talking about with regards to being uncomfortable as well. Like when you're used to being slightly uncomfortable a lot of the time, it puts everything in perspective. Like,
100%.
In a cold shower here, easy, because I was doing it for like 3 months in the winter in Switzerland. Like, it's warm.
Feels great.
Yeah, and it feels awesome.
100%.
You mentioned it. Literally just got back into that, and that is, I just made a video the other day as well. I haven't even posted yet, talking about. I didn't actually use this terminology, but I'm basically talking about keystone habits. And I was actually using an analogy of tools in the toolbox, and I actually had my tools out on the table, and I was kind of talking about the pitfalls of putting sort of 80% of the focus, or even more than that, really 95% of the focus in most cases, just on exercise and nutrition, and then not paying enough to the other kind of major factors that contribute to good health, which are sleep, mindset management, establishing habits and behaviors, and internal practices and things. There was something else in there as well, I think. But yeah, my point was really, and I'll post that video over the next couple of days for anyone who wants to watch it. It's going to be on YouTube or whatever. Yeah, well, the point that I'm really making on that is that by allocating slightly less energy for exercise and diet, and putting some of that energy and distributing across those other factors, exercise and diet will improve anyway. They will improve because those other things improve. They are all keystone habits. They are catalysts for more good behavior. And I give like a quick example that I sort of mentioned in the video. It's like, you know, if you start putting some, or let's say one of the obstacles is to getting your exercise done is that you're low on energy. And after digging deeper as a coach, you know, comes to the surface that that's a result of poor sleep. Well, guess what? If we start working on your sleep, you're going to have more energy to train, and then training improves. You know, one example of how these things are interconnected.
Rising tide floats all ships.
Sorry?
I said a rising tide floats all ships.
Exactly. Good. Yeah. Put it better myself. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Yeah, when we start to spread our energy across these differing factors, and we accept that they are all interconnected, you know, then everything starts to improve in unison, and you're actually putting less energy into an improved result because they're complementing each other. You know, like 20% of the energy that you put into sleep, some of that energy is also going into not binge eating because you're doing it for emotional comfort because you're stressed, or whatever else. There's hundreds of examples that I could come out with. Anyway, I've already made them about it. But yeah, that's a really good point. What you're saying, I can't remember how we went down this tangent, but
well, also rest is where the magic happens. So
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
To habits. Well, rest is also where the magic happens as well, in that sense.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
You know, training. No one gets fit at training off doing the 100 meters, and then 100 meters while you train. You get weaker while you train. You get fitter and stronger when you rest.
That's it.
And that's essentially
improve in the gym,
actually in your sleep. Yeah. Yeah.
You've cut out a little bit to me. I don't know what it's like to the viewer, but it's sort of going between robotic and cutting out. So just in case that's not kind of making its way into the video, I'll just cut it off there. And if you do come back, I'm just saying that we basically covered all the main areas there. Really, the myths that I wanted to cover was the amount of sort of exercise that is required to.
Audio might be a little out of sync.
Yeah, I was just waiting a second to see if your feed would come back to me, but it's gone to me, so I'm assuming it's gone to everyone else. Can you hear me okay, or might have you back now? No? Okay, well, in any case, I think that was a really good place to sort of finish up. The Keystone Habits can be a whole nother podcast, or just habits and behaviors in general can be a whole nother live talk, which I think would be probably a good place to head to probably next week. On Thursday, we're going to have a sports psychologist with us, Doreen Van Dent, which is going to be super, super interesting talk. So we're going to dive a bit further into mindset and stuff on that one. And then me and you, Gaz, can probably go into a bit more detail about sort of behaviourisms and things next week. I feel like that could be a good topic, so people can keep an eye on that. I forgot to mention on the video, at any point, feel free to leave comments if you had any. But if you want to comment on this afterwards, drop any questions in the comments box, then I'll review those later and look to answer those and touch on anything that wasn't clear in this or that people want more information on. I'm going to post this later in the Thesis Body and Mind community, okay, which is a free group for everyone to support each other. Loads of advice going in there, much more stuff going in there than goes on my personal page, including sort of home workout ideas and you know, other coaching videos and things. So if you're watching this on my personal page and you haven't joined that community, jump in that. There's going to be some really good stuff going up on there. Yeah. If you're, are you back, Gaz? You want to part with anything?
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
Anything you want to leave us with?
No, I think we've said enough.
Do you think Emrys has got everything out of it that he was hoping to to touch on?
Oh, it's good. I think we're starting to break up on the signal a little as well.
Okay, no worries. All right, awesome. Well, we'll leave it there then, and yeah, I'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Sure. All right, pal. Until next time.
Thanks a lot, man. See you soon.
Farewell. Yeah. Adieu.